This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the Wednesday morning Yaskawa IQ class, and we are being recorded. Last week we spoke about the harmonic distortion analyzer that Yaskawa supplies, and I did check, and we do not have an active front-end module or adder to the system portion of that program. So I've made a request to do that. In the meantime, I went ahead and downloaded Toshiba's program, and I gotta tell you, it looks suspiciously like our program. Here it is. Does this look familiar, Greg?
Very familiar.
So we start a project. There you go. Bart de Vries wrote our harmonics program. The fellow down in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this looks just like ours. I'm gonna call Bart. He's a fellow Dutchman, and I'll ask him. So anyway, add system and type linear load 6 pulse, blah blah blah, 12 pulse, 24 pulse isolation transformer, 18 pulse auto transformer with DC link reactor. That's the Toshiba system. So they are relatively limited also. They only put in what they put in. Does Toshiba not have an active front-end product, Craig?
I do not think they do.
I think they use Bonatron.
Good old Bomatron. Okay, well, so they have a similar limitation and narrow world view focus as we do. We only put our own products on there. In fact, in our case, we don't even put our own products on there because we have an active front-end drive and we do not put it on our harmonics analyzer. So let's hope that we can change that and make our harmonics analyzer from Yaskawa more inclusive of the other things that you will find in a power system. Not the least of which is we should have the ability, and I forgot to add this into my email to Ed Tom, that we should have the ability to add in SCR-based heaters. There's a lot of SCR-based DC power supplies that we run into in the field. Those are certainly nonlinear loads and will affect the harmonic distortion. So, a little bit of review from last week, but this is a competitor's harmonic distortion program, which looks suspiciously like our harmonic distortion program, and thus is probably written by the same company. I'll delve into that in our investigative reporting during the week and report back to you in the next class. So, what we want to talk about a little bit today is the rebate programs available from the power companies. This is something that I come across often during the week. People wanting to get some clarity on a very muddy issue, apparently, but the issue being, how do I qualify for the maximum amount of rebate for this spanky new VFD that I just put in? And Craig, I'm going to let you, if you don't mind, speak a little bit about the history that we have being involved in this project with specifically PG&E. I don't think we have any involvement with Southern California Edison. But we did get to have some insight into the development of the specification by the consultant that was hired by PG&E to develop the rebate program equipment guidelines. Is that fairly stated, Craig?
It's fairly stated, except for the fact where they should be called guidelines, but Dr. Burt had them called specifications.
So it's not so much a guideline then, it's the hard and fast rules that they require that you comply to.
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, I didn't see your email regarding the spec. Did you send that to me?
And that's what I'm trying to check, because like I told you, my laptop is not behaving right now.
Well, maybe you can put it up on the screen. I can give you presentation rights.
No, because I'm working off my cell phone now, because my laptop is not behaving at all.
Okay. Well, while you're looking for that, the rebate programs that are offered by the power companies in California are meant to encourage behavior that in the customer base that is beneficial to the long-term goals of the California Public Utilities Commission. If I'm hesitating or speaking slowly, I'm trying to find my words here. I just want to say it correctly.
Well, can I go into the how the spec with Dr. Burt came about?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's kind of a convoluted story, but if anybody's gone to San Luis Obispo, they've got something now under the tutelage of Dr. Charles Bart that they have what they call their Irrigation Research Technology Center. So Dr. Burt is well known in the ag water industry, but he's mostly known for canals. So he got into this thing where he decided that he wanted to get into the specifications of drives being put into ag markets, and he wanted them to be uniform. And he basically cut and pasted a bunch of specs from different companies into one large spec, which is when anybody reads the spec, they get a little confused because he asked for basically mutually exclusive things in some spots. So
Craig, was Dr. Burt hired by PG&E to do this as a consultant?
Yes, he was hired basically as a consultant, and then PG&E didn't have the project management power to do something like this, so they basically gave him free rein on it.
And he did this under the auspices of the Cal Poly institution where he is a professor, or he did this independently as an independent consultant?
As a professor from Cal Poly at the Irrigation Research Technology Center.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Dr. Burt wrote a spec, and the spec that he wrote it's not quite gray, but it's a dark gray. And what they did was they broke up the rebates into 3 different categories. And the categories are a little bit convoluted, but basically to say that a standard IQ pump system that you put out in the field handles the tier 1. If you want it to go to tier 2, then you have to have harmonic mitigation on it. And if you wanted to go to tier 3, this is the funny one, you have to not use outside air to cool the VFD cabinet with, which means basically you have to put some kind of air conditioning unit on it. So the whole idea to put the drive in to save energy now just got thrown out the window because he wants us to put a 2-ton air conditioner on the side of a panel.
So let me just be clear. The first tier, and hopefully you can get your laptop to wake up. But is these tier definitions, are they available on the PG&E website?
They don't. They are, but they lead you to the itrc.org.
Not DSIRE then, but ITRC.
Yeah, Irrigation Research Technology Center.
Okay, Irrigation Research Technology Center.org. I'm going to search this up while you're speaking.
Okay.
The first tier is, let's just speak strictly about installing a 300 horsepower VFD on a pump. The first tier doesn't have a lot of qualifications.
No, it's basically you've got to have low harmonics, which for all intents and purposes, you just put a line reactor in front of the drive and the PG&E rebate is met. The higher harmonics don't get into play until you get into tier 2.
Okay. And he's requiring IEEE 519 compliance?
Correct.
Okay, and I would assume
But no testing.
It's 2014, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, and do you remember what the levels of dollar amounts are for these 3 tiers?
Tier 1, I think it's $50 per horsepower. Tier 2 is 70, and tier 3 is 90.
Right. So for $50 a horsepower, which is $15,000 on a 300 horsepower drive, that's pretty significant. You basically have to just put the drive in with a reactor in front of it.
Yes, but it depends on who you get as the inspector, because some of the inspectors are actually interpreting that they want a harmonic filter in front of it.
Okay, well, there's always that sort of.
You submit your application up front, and here's the fun part, which is, have you gotten my email yet?
Not yet.
Okay, it's weird because I forwarded it again to you. So.
Okay, let me just check. But go ahead.
But where was I going with that one? It's so convoluted. But we've got a situation where the tier 1 specification is, again, a gray area one. It says you have to meet 519, which again we can do with a line reactor. So what PG&E did is to isolate themselves from all these questions. They hired a third party now this year to handle all the paperwork on submitting for rebate. And you've got to dot your I's, cross your T's, the whole 9 yards with this company. Otherwise, they will not supply the rebate.
That sounds normal for government. It doesn't surprise me. They want to make sure we have good compliance. Okay. So I got your email. What I have up on the screen is the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo site, the ITRC that you mentioned, their Irrigation Technology Research Center. I imagine is what that acronym stands for. And there's something here called Getting Started and VFD Specifications. Then I have your email. So if you'll allow me to do the screen while you speak. So Agricultural Energy Savings Action Plan Rebate Catalog. So there's the table of contents. And okay, it's great. It's active. So tier, there we go. All right. The thing that occurs to me, Craig, is that if you put in a 300 horsepower pump and you get $15,000 back for that, well, that's really great. To put this in perspective, let me just call up the costs for that sort of program. Give me 1 second. And I can tell you what a 300 horsepower drive costs. So in list price terms, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but our list price, by the time it gets to the end user, the list price is probably a little bit high in terms of what the fellow will pay for that.
Correct.
So figure 80% of that. So let me pull up the, there we go. Okay. So we're going to pull up a 300 horsepower configured package. IQ1000 configured drive. Here we go. And we want NEMA 3R. And okay, so a 460 volt package. At 300 horsepower is going to cost $31,000, plus you add a breaker in, and let's add a high amperage breaker in, so that's $3,100. So let's call it $35,000, which is probably a bit more than. And by the way, does the rebate also include installation costs, Craig?
No, it does not.
So just the equipment cost.
Well, technically, it could have the labor put in it because you're supposed to get an invoice to submit, and I think they let you redact the pricing on it, so they might be able to get it through.
Okay, so we're talking about roughly $35,000, and your rebate is $50 a horsepower at the tier 1 level. So you're looking at, exclusive of installation costs, getting about 50%, a little bit less than 50% back on what you're paying for the actual giant white box. Fair enough?
Yes.
Now, you get an extra $20 a horsepower if you go to harmonic compliance. So that is an extra $6,000. And to go to harmonic compliance, can you elaborate on what they mean by that? You said, oh, sorry, you did say that it's full compliance to IEEE 519.
Right.
So, let's see, do we have an 18 pulse? We only have a 12 pulse system.
Correct. We're looking at putting an 18 pulse on the line.
All right, well, let's go to the matrix drive pricing and see what that's going to cost. So, a 3R enclosure matrix drive price, wake up, there we go. 480 volt, remember we were at 35,000. A full 3R matrix drive is 86,000, so call it about 75,000 to the end user customer. So it's a little bit, it's about twice what the cost of the standard drive without an input filter is. Okay? Which is pretty much what we tell the customer base. If you want harmonic compliance, you take your basic drive in the white box that you put in there, and you double the price to get it to be compliant to IEEE 519. So the additional investment is another $30,000+, for which you get back $6,000 rebate. These numbers don't seem to work for me, Craig. Did I lose you, Craig? Apparently I did. So the the tier 2 level, which is IEEE 519 compliance, is apparently not worth it, and I don't see anybody making that investment. It is not required by law. Therefore, tier 2 is something that isn't an effective motivation, shall we say. You're going to find that the costs of our drives are pretty much the same as everybody else's. It's a very competitive market, and the cost of going to IEEE 519 compliance is also similar for all the manufacturers out there, but whether it's us, ABB, Toshiba, Danfoss, the Franklin brand, which is the Korean LS drive, and some of the others out there. So it looks to me like the answer is tier 2 is not economically viable. And if you're evaluating the investment in IEEE 519 compliance to get to tier 2, you're going to say no. In the 300 horsepower case, it's going to cost me $35,000. I'm only going to get $6,000 back. Therefore, to do it, you would need $29,000 of other motivation to put a clean power drive out there. In the state of Washington, they don't give you a choice, because the state of Washington, their power utility has said, no, we need clean power. We need to maximize the efficiency of our grid, et cetera, et cetera. Things we went over in the class yesterday or last week. But in California, we haven't gotten to that level yet. What you're seeing here is the first step. Welcome back, Craig. Feel free to jump in. What you're seeing here is the first step of California moving towards IEEE 519 clean power compliance. The encouragement through a first revision specification. Now, I believe that the powers that be recognize that this first blush specification isn't quite where they want the program to be. I'm pretty sure that we've heard them say that, and they've said that they will revise this specification as they learn more and more about what the requirements are. So I don't want to be too critical here. I think it's a good first step forward in something that the power company needs to do to increase the efficiency of usage on the grid so that we can all continue to maintain good availability of electrical power. Their first specification, to be in summation, what I'm going to say is go for first tier. Going for second tier and additionally third tier with respect to PG&E and the IRTC or ITRC organization, the Irrigation Technology Research Center, it just doesn't pan out economically. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to spend $35,000 to get back $6,000. With regards to the third tier, which is putting an air conditioner on the unit, that may work out economically, because an air conditioner on a 300 horsepower drive is probably about $6,000 or $8,000. So you can do that, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me from an engineering standpoint, because we all know that throughout the valley, and frankly from Mexico border to the Oregon border, we've got thousands of pumping panels out there, not just Yaskawa, but everybody else. And for the most part, those panels are no longer air conditioned. There are still some companies out there that are putting out air conditioned panels because they haven't figured out how to do a 50 degrees C ambient or 122 degree Fahrenheit ambient white box in the sun without air conditioning. Most of the manufacturers have done that, and therefore you don't see air conditioners on the agricultural installations. It's been months since I've seen one. I think the last one I saw was an Allen Bradley out there. That air conditioner, from an engineering standpoint, is a single point failure. If the air conditioner fails and the VFD has been sized to depend upon the air conditioner, that VFD can no longer operate. That's what I mean by a single point failure. You're adding a relatively complicated device, the air conditioner. It is a bunch of fans and a compressor motor, lots of rotating, moving stuff. The cost to put an air conditioner out there that is suitable for the agricultural environment, which means it has to take rain, heat, most important, windborne dust that gets everywhere, and then all the critters that we have found over the years in our panels, and we've found pretty much every species I can think of. The fact is that that air conditioner is got to be built tough. So, if I were to try to qualify for the third tier, Craig, are you there? Can you speak now?
Yeah, now I can speak. Sorry.
Excellent. Question is, if you want to go for the third tier, do you need to comply to the second tier?
It's kind of a culmination of everything that the second tier does. Yeah.
Okay, so the third tier, which is add an air conditioner, is unattainable unless you do the second tier.
Right.
So this discussion is somewhat moot then.
Well, here's again. I was sorry before I got cut out and I
It's
couldn't
all right.
speak, but the way that the spec is written, it's a triple spec with a dual set of baselines, one below 75 horsepower and one above 100 horsepower. If you're below 75 horsepower, I was telling you about the 3% reactor, you can put that in.
Yes.
On the terminology for the above 75 horsepower is you have to meet total harmonic distortions of 5%, doesn't say where, certified by a registered electrical engineer, and to meet IEEE, 529 or 519, sorry, 519 at the point of common coupling, which if you've got a good clean drive with a decent, load reactor, you could technically calculate that out on paper to make it look like it could meet.
Okay.
So what they haven't done is, so far as we haven't seen anybody put in the money for the tier 3 because, tier 3 top 2, which is basically full harmonic 5% with an air conditioner, yet, because by the time you get there, it's not a rebate, it's an offset.
Well, I'd like, as you're going through this, I'd like to put this spec up. I have the document that you sent me. Can you guide me to the place where, let's see, let's get back up to Agwell Boost. Yeah. There it is. Okay.
Yeah. Should be a little higher than that, I think. Isn't it?
Higher. You can go higher.
Yeah, I think this is it. There's 50 horsepower rated.
Okay, so efficient VFD ag pumps on a well less than 300 horsepower. Efficient VFD ag pumps booster less than 150. VFD on ag pumps well, what is AOE? Less than 3 horsepower.
It's a new one.
Okay. And then, so I don't know what the differentiation is between NC and AOE, but these are what the recommended applications. So here's what you have to do to get the $50 per horsepower rebate, right? Is there anything above this? No. Okay. No. Now, to get to tier 2, which is $70 per horsepower. Oh, look at that! If you go above 300 horsepower, you get $70 a horsepower.
Yeah.
But here is the same efficient mid-tier. Where's the definition for mid-tier?
I haven't seen that anywhere.
Well,
The only thing we can think of is that they're talking about that's tier 2.
okay, so where's the definition for tier 2?
It's back in the spec on the other side. Well, no, it's a different spec. It's in the ITRC spec or IRTC spec.
Okay, which I just had up a moment ago. Let me see if I can pull that up. VFD specifications. This is the document you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's the gentleman, Charles Burt, Kyle Feist, and Gary Wilson. Very good. Okay, well, let's go over this a little bit. Can you guide me through this since you've read this?
There's the definitions of, they outline everything in the definitions. And then when you go down further, a little bit past that, yeah, this is where you start getting into the generals. And this is, again, where when we start reading this, it has conflicting information that they want.
Okay.
So you have to go back down a little bit further.
Technical specifications for VFD systems. I think what I'm going to do with this, I'm not very prepared for this class. I'm going to redo this class because we need to highlight the things that people need to be aware of on this.
Yeah, and if you go down, it's more than halfway through. Like I said, it doesn't give good definition of what they mean by their tiers.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that called out. There's the end spec right here.
Yeah, you got to keep going down until you get to the table. I think I got it.
This is it.
Oh.
Should I get another document?
Yeah, it was the one that was
That's installation specifications, and I downloaded the design specifications.
Yeah, what's this one? I tried to read this on my laptop screen after I'm used to 29-inch monitors. Where's that? That's interesting because mine is labeled, it's supposed to be the VFD ARM specs. So the VFD farm specs should have been on that rebate page.
Well, I'm not seeing it. There's all your required documentation. I'm assuming that this is what translates to effectively the PG&E requirements because it's not PG&E site, it's ITRC site.
Correct. That's why it gets so convoluted is that PG&E basically, after they hired on the contracting firm to hand out the rebates, they're completely divested of the whole project.
So who does the evaluations? Is ITRC the evaluating authority?
The evaluations for the spec?
For your compliance and getting your money.
That's the new company that's I'm drawing a blank on the name of it.
So it's not PG&E, it's a complete separate company that they're hiring to do this administrative work.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, they probably didn't have
in fact, it's in that rebate book. If you look at the front of it, it's got a different name on it.
Okay. Well, here's a sample. Here's a sample submission done by our friends at the Farm Pump Company.
Yeah.
And this one is ending up being. This is on a Danfoss drive, I guess, right?
Yes. They didn't want to show any favoritism, but interesting.
That's all right. Okay, so that's a sample. Well, all right. So I was challenged in finding the tier definitions. We'll do a bit better job of that for next week. But the bottom line is, as I said earlier in this session, it doesn't make sense to consider tier 2 and tier 3 because you have to spend more money than you get back. And I don't see any technical advantage to the end user of the compliance at tier 2 and certainly not at tier 3 that would justify the extra money that he has to spend beyond the rebate that he's going to get. Is that a fair statement?
Well, not really. See here, I'm trying to find, I didn't send you one other document, so forgive me for that. On farm.
What's interesting here is that where Dr. Burt wants to see an air conditioner on the VFD, which is a relatively efficient device in terms of its heat loss. It's, you know, the major brands are 98% or better efficient. He says here, can the harmonic mitigation device be external to the VFD system enclosure? Yes. The location of the harmonic mitigation device is not part of the specifications as long as it is cooled, shaded, and protected from the environment as recommended by the manufacturer. That's interesting.
Yeah.
He recommends air conditioning for the device that is relatively efficient, but these harmonic mitigation filters, as you know, are very inefficient. They're big chunks of copper and iron, unless you have an active front end, which is in essence a VFD, and they're not requiring it to be air conditioned. Down here in item 5, can filtered outside air be used for direct cooling of VFD electronics if the VFD system enclosure is painted white or shaded? No. That seems to be a direct knock against every NEMA 3R implementation that we see from the Mexican border to the Oregon border.
Exactly. Yet when we went and showed them our panels, they were impressed with the lack of dust inside the panels, and they did give a verbal, it's okay if it's a Yaskawa unit, but we can't say that.
Well, and I don't think that Square D's unit is any less than ours, for example. They do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, this is okay, so we can claim that we led the way, but this wasn't space-age rocket technology to develop a non-air conditioned VFD enclosure for agricultural applications. We had to go through the school of hard knocks, but we figured it out, and the technology is a relatively low level to achieve good performance in the field over the span of, well, now we've had these things out there for 20 years.
Which was our defense, but Dr. Burke didn't care. It's a personal preference, is what we found out. His personal preference is that there is no dust inside the panel.
Okay, I get that, and with respect to the ITRC, PG&E has come out and said this is the first revision of the specification. We will look at modifying it in years to come as this program develops and they learn more. I mean, you know, when we came out to the field 20 years ago, Craig, we didn't know anything about the requirements of agricultural VFD usage, and we put some units out there that got pretty dirty. We've had the benefit of 2 decades of experience to make a package that now is extremely reliable, and we need to perhaps allow these folks to gain that experience as well. And they certainly can travel not too far from San Luis Obispo and see a whole bunch of these things in action and open up the doors and see what kind of dirt is inside.
Yeah.
So hopefully the next revision will work. Okay, well, do you have any other documents? I really had hoped that we would be able to show people a defined Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 classification, but it appears that this is going to require a lot more study to get to that level of understanding.
Right. And you can't really get there because the spec, or the spec is written so gray. It's like I said, here's one of the spots where we hit anything over 75 horsepower has to meet 5% total harmonic distortion at the point of common coupling. So that's where I was telling you it's kind of a double rebate, is below 75 and above 100.
Okay.
Because above 100 is where you're basically forced into going into a harmonic filtration system.
To get to tier 2.
To get to tier 2.
Right. But again, to get to tier 1.
The way it's written, and Dr. Bird are interpreting this as anything above 75 horsepower now has to only be tier 2 or tier 3 because it has to meet the 5% total harmonic distortion. But
that means he's not going to pay the $50 level for non-compliant stuff. And this is what, I mean, he's in fairness, we need to see this in writing.
And they basically, at PGD and the TRC, I think it's called, ITRC people, that they say refer to the ITRC's website. That company right there that you're looking at.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in conclusion, I'm going to apologize. We apparently need to do a bit more research on this to come up with a clear guideline to the folks that will eventually download and listen to this class. So I may re-record it. But the bottom line is we just don't see any reason to go past tier 1 at this point. And hopefully if you're installing 100, 200, 300, 400 horsepower units where the dollars are significant, you can get the tier 1. Now I dealt with one this week where it was 175 horse or 150 horse unit, and it seemed that they were going to get their rebate. They were just questioning whether they should apply for tier 2 or tier 1, and I advised them to apply for tier 1 because tier 2 they didn't comply to.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I'm going to end this class a little bit early today because this was what I had scheduled to discuss. And Craig, I'm going to ask you to get together with me and put together another recording that will be a bit more concise so that we can put that message out to the market. And if you would, we need to find a better definition of the tiers and perhaps consolidate that. Do you have some contact at ITRC that we could request that from?
I can try with Kyle.
Yeah, he seemed to be a good fellow.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. I'll reach out to him.
And then you will then let me know, and then we'll do a little recorded session together to replace this recording because this one's a bit rambling, and I don't think anybody's going to want to watch it.
Right.
And Karen, were you able to, or Craig, were you able to see that link and download the video from last week?
Let me check. Our systems just must not like talking to each other, Pierce. I have nothing from you.
That's weird. Karen, are you still there?
Let me go to the spam folders.
Oh, Karen has left. Okay. Joe, are you willing to be a guinea pig? Yeah,
I've got nothing.
How odd.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take this offline, Craig. I think we've lost most of the folks today anyway, because we rambled so much.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me give you a call in a minute, and then we will, let's work this out. I want to get this Dropbox thing resolved once and for all.
Okay.
All right, thanks. See you in a minute.